Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Learning FreeCAD for Beginners, teaching the fundamentals of FreeCAD whilst we learn workflows. Now we're going to be doing something a bit different today. This video is actually spread over a number of videos. There's about 5 in all, and the idea is to complement the Learning FreeCAD for Beginners series with something that I call CAD thinking. In the first kind of pilot to this, we'll be creating this model. So this is a latch assembly. But the problem a lot of people have and a lot of beginners have is breaking down the physical form into a digital form. So what I'm aiming to teach in these videos is how to model each of these parts, breaking them down into their primitive form in an easy to learn way. On that journey, you're going to understand the reasons why we took such choices, such as tackling the object from one profile versus another. We're going to be complementing that by taking other choices as well. So we're going to be taking a different route through that journey and showing the consequences and challenges of that route. We're going to be covering such things as model stability, the reasons why we do fillets and chamfers last, understanding the different ways of creating the part depending on the viewpoint we take. We're following a part design and then an A2 plus assembly workbench workflow. When you're finished, you'll have what you see on screen here and the simulation behind that. Please note this is in multiple parts. So once you've completed one part, the other part will be available on my channel. If it's not, then just wait a couple of days and it will appear. I'm hoping to release this over a number of days. Also, once all the parts are on YouTube, they will be also available for download from my Ko-Fi shop, and you can consume this at your leisure. So I hope you enjoy this series. I hope you enjoy this pilot episode. I am looking at doing episodes around organic modeling and curve modeling in the same vein. So let's have a look how we would tackle such an object. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. So this is the assembly that we'll be creating in FreeCAD. When I started this, I actually had the physical latch itself in my hand and I was looking at it from all the different angles. The first thing I did with this latch was break it up into the individual parts. Now, when we transfer a physical object to CAD, it can be quite hard to get our mind around the different shapes and forms and how to translate those into a digital form. Now, one thing to remember with this, it's human made. Therefore, it's probably been made in a package such as CAD. So our primitive objects and shape that make up the latch will more likely be available in the CAD package as because it's been created from that CAD package in the first place. So if we think about in FreeCAD, we have cylinder, we have the sphere, the cube, etc. We have to think wider as well regarding the 2D objects we have in there. So look at the sketcher and think about what we've got in there. We've got circle, we've got arc, we've got slot. So when tackling something like this, we first need to make the object less complex in our mind, visualizing it in that way. So with this, we need to take away the parts until we get to the part that we want to model, which is this part here. So we're going to start with this part here. When those parts have been taken away, we can focus on this shape. Though this is being recreated in FreeCAD, if I had this in my hand, I would be doing exactly the same thing. Straight away, I can see that this is slot geometry. So I'm looking at it from different profiles. I'm looking at it from the top. I'm looking at it from the side. I'll be doing this with the physical object itself in my hand. I'm also looking at it from the back. And I'm picking out the profiles from those viewpoints. So if I look at it from the top, I can see we've got circles and a slot. So in Sketcher, we have those tools. From the side, I can see we've got this hook shape, which is basically 2 arcs. So we've got 2 profiles. We've got a slot profile, and then from the side, we've got this hook profile. I'll be supplying the initial pictures of this part on my blog, including technical drawings for the actual item itself. So let's start to model the latch assembly part 1. So we're going to first tackle this from the top profile. Our profiles are very simple, and we're going to use this top profile and first create our slot. If we look, we can see that this actually flares out here. So it's actually going out this way as well. So we're going to tackle it from the top and then work on the side. The green is what we're going to add and the red is what we're going to remove, along with the sketch geometry that we're going to use. Looking at the technical drawing for the reference, we can see we've got the slot with the 2 holes and we've got the radius of the holes and the slot. So let's sketch those. We're in the part design, we'll create a new document, and I'm going to create a new body, new sketch, and we're looking down on the XY plane and hit OK. Looking down from the top. I'm going to start with a simple slot. Now we have our slot, let's put some dimensions in. So I'm going to take the top arc, make the diameter, constrain diameter, and make that 14 millimeters and hit OK. So now we've got one dimension in, we can start adding some more constraints. Let's take these 2 points and this one. We're going to make sure that the remove redundant constraints are on, this checkbox here. So click it, make sure it's saying auto remove redundant constraints, and the auto constraints are on as well. We're going to make those symmetrical. So that's symmetrical to the center, and if we have some skewing like this, then we can take one of the sides and place a vertical constraint upon there. So we have this shape now. Let's constrain the height. To do that, we need to actually constrain these 2 points here and take into account the radius. So we're going to take these 2 points and place a height in here. So if you think what we've got the 14 millimeter diameter. So we've got to take in both the radius to the bottom and the top, which is half of this times 2, so it's still 14. And we've got to figure out the length here. This isn't the length of this side, this is the length of the curve, this bit here. So our full length is 24. So we can use 10 in here, 10 millimeters. So 24 minus 14. We have a fully constrained shape, but we do need to modify this slot geometry. If we look back, we can see that this part here is straight and this part is at an angle going this way. Geometry has been broken here and an arc has been placed in. Let's do that. So delete left hand geometry. Use an arc. I'm going to go for endpoint and rim point because I can select the top point and coincident to the bottom point because we've got the auto constraints on. So when I roll over them, we get coincident and we place that arc in. We next take this arc and use a tangent constraint. So okay, we've got some problems along the right hand side. So I'm going to select that right hand side and use a vertical constraint to bring that back in. We're going to do the same with the top arc. Tangency. Okay. Now I've got control of this tangent arc, so you can see these are coming around this way. And for the time being, I'm just going to take this point and this line, point on object constraint. So it's fully constrained. Now we're going to add some circles. So I'm going to create a circle constrained to this point, coincident, and this one. Let's set the radius of these circles. We're looking for the inner radius, this one here, which is R2, so 2 millimeters. The 2.5 is the chamfer, which we'll add last. So I'm going to hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, take both of these at the same time and add the radius, making sure it's radius, not diameter, of 2 millimeters. And hit close. Now we've got our first shape. We've made some assumptions with this arc and we can select that sketch and make our pad. Looking back, we can see we've got a height here of 2 mil. So this is going to be our pad. 2 millimeters and OK. So we've got this shape here. We can change this radius if we want, if it's too large, which I can see it is. So I can come into the pad, double click on the sketch and we attach it to this body here. So this is a point on object constraint, so I can delete that and bring this in, and we'll set the radius of this using radius constraint. I'm going to say 25 for the time being. We don't know this, we're just going to add one in for the time being. Let's close that. We've got our first pad, and now we can use the side profile. So coming in from the side profile, this one here, and add this curve. Now this is where the symmetry came in. When I added the sketch, we created symmetry across the center point. So we go into view, toggle axis cross, we can see the center point here. This can make your life a lot easier. I'm going to create a sketch along the front. So make sure nothing's selected, new sketch, exit plane, and we're going to create a sketch here. Come up to the sketch view section, and you can see we've gone straight through the center of that object. If we look at the technical drawing, we can see we just got two arcs on two lines. Let's place the lines in first. So we're going to import some geometry, and we're going to come around and use this vertex here. Can't get the vertex, then we just bring in this arc. So we've got that point there. We don't need the bottom point because we can place it in line or actually attach it to this horizontal. I'm going to sketch a line coming out and do the same for down here, placing it point on object constraint along here, and we'll do the same for a line that goes down here. I can see that I've missed this point here, so I'm going to make sure this one has a vertical constraint and take this point and this point and make those coincident. One line is fully constrained, we'll add a vertical constraint along there as well. Click on front, and now we can start adding the arcs. Looking at the arcs, we can see that these lines where the arcs start basically attach to these lines, and these points are in line. Follow this up, we can see that the arc comes around and it's basically in line with those points as well. We've got no length here, so that's going to be derived by another measurement elsewhere in this diagram. So let's take these 2 points and place them in line, vertical constraint, and using the end point and rim point arc, I'm going to come up and create 2 arcs. Now you can see the line that goes through the middle of that arc, that determines where that arc's going to sit. So I'm just going to bring it in line with those two, like so. And we'll do the same with this one as well, and just bring this in line. Hit escape, and we'll set the radius. The radius is 4 and 2, so radius for this one 4, and the radius for this one is 2. We can see that these points are basically almost connected. They're on top of each other. So I'm going to highlight both of those using a box selection. So click and drag and click on the coincident constraint. That means those are on top of each other. I'm going to place a line in to connect these two up. And that's added a constraint on there, a vertical constraint. And I'm just going to make sure that this point and this point are in line. So everything now is in line. We just need to figure out this length here. Going back to the technical drawing, we can see that we've got a length 20 millimeters to the edge of this arc. So 20 millimeters up to here. Going back, well, we haven't got anything to add that 20 millimeters onto. So we need some kind of vertex here. This is where the point comes in. Select point, roll over that arc because we've got the auto constraints on. You can see a point on object constraint, click, and then create a constraint between that point and this point, the center point of those arcs, and make that horizontally aligned. So this doesn't move up and down now. Therefore, I can come over and bring in a point along this side. Doesn't matter which point you bring in, we can use the bottom or the top. So I brought in that point of this line. I'm now going to take the point on the arc and the point on this line and set a horizontal distance of 20 millimeters. We are fully constrained. Let's hit close. Note where the sketch lies. So it lies in the middle of this object. So I'm going to click the sketch and add a pad. The tip at the moment is this pad. So we're adding to the history. Select the sketch, click the pad. The pad is failing. So there's something wrong with our geometry. If I hit OK, you can see pad results has multiple solids. This is not supported this time. So something's wrong. If I hit symmetrical to plane and hit OK, we still get the problem. Let's cancel out of there and see what's gone wrong. Let's double click the sketch and look closer. So if you think about what's happening, let's come out to sketch, view section, take that off. When we pad, because we have this arc here, it's actually coming off this line and creating two separate bodies. So if we go forward, you can see that because we've got this arc that goes around here, it actually comes off of this line. How do we solve that? Well, we need to just place more material inside this object. So I'm going to release this point from this line by hitting delete. So let's come over to the sketch, back to view section, and see what's happened. I'm going to take this point and push it inwards. And also take the bottom point. These points have become unconnected, so I'm going to take this point and make those coincident. So now I've pushed this in, I can push it further into the material to compensate for this arc. If we look, we brought in the vertex here by just clicking on this line, so it's brought in the vertex from the start and the vertex from the middle point here, the end of that edge. So the best idea is to take this point and this point, make those coincident. We still have movement here, so you can see we've got this movement here. So I'm going to take this point because it moves past, so we'll keep them in line. So take this point and the center point. Vertical constraint, we're all constrained down, that's close. And now when we pad, we can see our pad has taken effect. We need to make this symmetrical by clicking on symmetrical to plane. That places that in the center there. We've got enough material in here, it looks a bit ugly, but when we hit OK, we can actually refine that in our last process. So the measurement for the pad is actually incorrect. We're going to change that later, and in doing so I'm going to show you how that affects any fillet that's been applied after that. So what we're doing now is we're coming to our last process in building this object, and that is refinement and chamfers and fillets. Let's deal with the chamfers and fillets first. So we always add this last of all. Reason being, if you add it earlier on in the process, then we create more faces and more edges, which can break our geometry. So we actually reference it in edges. We don't want to reference in fillets or chamfers because we can add a chamfer in here, and often we adjust those so we can make them 1mm, 2mm, depending on how we want the object to look. If we keep on changing those, we can affect an edge that's referenced to, because we may end up creating a chamfer that creates another edge or another face, and that can be damaging to the geometry that's referenced upon that. For instance, I can create a chamfer here on this one using the part design, apply dress up and chamfer. We can see that the radius here is 2.5, so we've added a 0.5 onto this radius. Size of 0.5. Hit enter, So we've got our first chamfer in here. If we added a sketch upon this face and referenced this circle here, then you can see straight away I've forgotten to add this one in. If I came back to this, we're adding more faces to that operation. And that can affect the geometry above that's been referenced to it. So this way, the last action denoted by the tip is the chamfer. And it's safe for me to come in here and add another edge, say here. And hit OK. And I've got nothing above it that's referencing it. That can cause a problem. I'm now going to put a fillet around here. So I'm going to take these two edges, the top and the bottom, control select both of those. Part design, apply dress up and fillet, or use the icon over here. Same recompute failed because it's 1mm. This is a 2mm fillet, so it's going 1mm one way, 1mm the other, and it's equaling 2mm, so it doesn't actually work. We have to go for 0.99 there, and we get our fillet. So we get a 1mm fillet that goes over to here, a 1mm fillet goes over to here, and they end up sharing the same edge. You can't do. So you just make it a little bit shorter, 0.99 or even 0.999, and hit OK. Therefore we got our curve there. We have another fillet going around the outside here. So for that I'm going to select the edges that run around the outside. We have 2mm to play with, and add the fillet. So you can see that's added there. And we're going to go for a 1mm fillet. Though it's not defined upon our technical drawing, we can see that this line is round about the middle point. So we've got a 1mm fillet coming down and 2mm height. So we're taking half that height. So what we're doing is just filling in calculated assumptions with the ones that we don't have, and hit OK. Basically finished our model. Now we've got these faces in here, which when this is exported out for 3D printing or machining, then these won't matter. But we can tidy this up. We've got the fillet. If we look down, we've got the part design, and we've got something called refine. So this is the last action. So we can set that refine to true. What that do is look for planar faces all along the same plane, and it will remove them. Well, it won't remove them, it will merge them together. So we can see that this is all along the same plane, and it's merged those faces together. So this is the last refinement. What we have now is our tree in the part design, and this is basically going back in time. So we've got the fillet. If I click on the next one, press the space bar, the fillet disappears and we get the fillet before, and we can move back through time. So when we get to this pad, if I come into here, we can see we have this sketch. If I press the space bar, we have the sketch for this pad. And from what was said previously, the length of this isn't correct. It's actually 12mm. So we come to the pad, click on the pad, and we're going to change the length. So I've gone back in time, and now I'm affecting the length of this pad. We have to be careful with all the features that are in front of this. If we change something on our pad, for instance, we're going to change this length so push it this way, then it may have effect on our chamfers, because it may remove some of the faces along here because they're not needed anymore and they're taken up by that pad. This is not a topological naming issue. This happens with all CAD packages. If you update a feature that removes a face or an edge that other geometry is referencing, then your CAD package will error and tell you what the problem is. This will happen in Fusion 360, it will happen in FreeCAD. It is not the topological naming issue. That is something totally different. So let's take this pad and just increase the length first by 11mm, you can see that we've got ticks coming up against the chamfer and against the pad. That means, if I click off, that they will recompute. Let's go for 12mm, the correct length. We can see we've got a problem. We've got an exclamation mark over the body. So something has happened which has caused an error. And if we roll off the body, we can see it's saying tip shape is empty. If I bring the length back of that pad to 11, we can see we've got no problems. So something's happening with this tip. Let's take a closer look. So we'll zoom in to see what's happening. Obviously this is growing in size. So take the pad. Let's try 11.5. We still got a problem. 11.4. 11.3. 11.2. And you can see the problem goes away. So in between 11.2 and 11.3, an issue occurs. Let's set this to 12 and delete the tip, the one that it's complaining about. So this little icon here, the green, is the tip. You can see when I press the space bar, it has vanished. Let's delete that, and we can see that problem has gone away. Let's try adding the fillet to these edges. So this is what was applied before. We're going to take all the edges, control select them, and add the fillet. We can see we've got a problem. Let's try a fillet of 0.5. So our previous fillet was too large for this feature, and we can see what's happening in that the fillet is coming around here and it's growing. So 0.6, let's go to 0.9, and you can see how it's vanishing. 0.7, and it's appeared back. Sometimes with fillets we have problems when it comes to these types of areas. So you can see where this is coming around here. We've obviously got a problem in here. We've got a number of edges in here that are probably affecting this fillet. So remember when we refined the face before? Well, let's refine this and add the fillet. So I'm going to delete that fillet. Select the last fillet, which took absolutely fine. Select refine to true. That refines this object. Now select the edges by selecting one edge and then using the control key as we move around the other edges, keeping that held down to apply it to the selection. And apply the fillet. And the 1mm fillet has taken. So that refinement has cleaned up the edges and allowed that fillet to take. It's always worth trying to refine the object when you're having problems with fillets. When you have the types of junctions without the refine, between these edges. And you can see we've gone into error. The minute we come into the refine, and it solved our problem. Let's bring the fillet back. And just hide the sketch pressing the spacebar. So thank you for watching part 1 of this tutorial. Part 2 will be up on my channel shortly, if it isn't already there. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a Ko-Fi site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.